Right, we're on. Yes, people, welcome back to Process. Today we are joined by professional footballer at Newcastle United, currently on loan at Plymouth Argyle, and one of my former teammates from back in the day, Mr. Kell Watts. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having us.
No worries. It was good to catch up beforehand, and obviously a lot's happened since the last time I seen you. We're trying to think of the last time that I seen you. Obviously, played together at Newcastle. You were a few years younger than me, but before we dive into your whole story, I want to jump back to kind of the start. Very interested in how people kind of get to the point where they're at today with the success. Obviously, you've kind of took off, like I said. When did you first, like, how did football kind of become a thing for you? When did it first start?
It was probably, obviously, I was living in the houses when I was a kid. So my family moved up there just to like want a bit of a quieter life. And it obviously like living right by the beach and everything. And I think it was just my brother and my dad, to be honest. I would just go to the field, and because obviously in sales there's not actually much to do. There's no big shopping centres or like anything. So yeah, just playing football with my brother on the field, playing like crossbars with my dad. And then it just got to the point where I just got obsessed with just playing football, where like before school I'd just be like saying to my dad, "Oh, come and go in the schoolyard for half an hour, like an hour before school started," and then just always wanted to play football, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you mentioned about that, like going to the schoolyard 30 minutes early, I looked at one of you've done an interview in Newcastle and stuff, and I know you obviously pretty well from coming through and seeing you. You played with my brother a little bit when you were younger as well, so I know the type of personality you are, and you were always at training early. Like you talked about it in like, interviews and stuff. You were like, you could train 2 hours early and stuff like that. Was that something that was kind of brought into you from your family or your dad or anything, or was it just something that because you enjoyed it so much you just wanted to do it?
Yeah, I think like because when you were a kid, like you don't get tired, do you? You don't really get like a tight hamstring the next day after you've been training too much and all that. So yeah, I would just obviously it started off because when I lived in Seahouses, I was travelling into Newcastle, so my dad would take us in, but like to miss all the traffic and everything, would get there about just like 4 o'clock, maybe just after 4 for train at 6, and I would just bring a ball and just kick in the goal, get it back, like we just keep doing it, and then even when I moved down to Newcastle, it was still like, well, I want to can I keep going at 4 o'clock, so I can keep and it's got a routine from when I was a kid, and then it always just seemed to stick. And I think it's just as well, like even for everything, isn't it? Like just punctuality is just like sort of being put in me, or like just like even for like now, like in meetings and going out to training, like always just to try to just be the first one out there. And that's what it is, really.
I like that. Always turn up in what's the I think it was a Bobby Robson saying, it was like always be 15 minutes early, not a minute late, or something like that. So getting those habits instilled in it's kind of, it almost become your automatic norm from a young age, obviously being so early to everything, getting there and setting them good habits from a young age. Obviously you probably just carry them on now with your meetings and stuff like that you were talking about.
So I think like as well, like when you're a kid as well, like a technical side of your game, if you the more hours, say maybe I trained as someone else my age, would have been ridiculous. If you think like maybe you train 3-4 times a week, I was training like 2 extra hours like a day, so like that's 8 hours. And obviously you can go like, well, what's that, a month? That's like 32, and then over a year. So I think it just helps massively.
Yeah, I love that.
Getting practicing.
Yeah, days would have been quite long then when you were young. Obviously, quite a bit of traveling and stuff. Like, did it ever get like? Was it actually kind of tough at any point for you, for like, especially when you were younger, kind of before you turned full time? Was there any times where you're like, God, this is actually quite tiring and stuff? Or was it just literally just like you said before, you were quite young, you had a lot of energy? Was it just something you didn't even think about too much?
Yeah, I think it's this is probably one of the biggest points that keeps us going and keeps us motivated, because when we first lived in Seahouses, I've got a brother, I've got a sister, and then when I got scouted for Newcastle, because I was playing for Cramlington, so like because I was playing for my school team and playing for Seahouses, and like against like Wooler and Berwick, and then like my dad was like wanting to take us to somewhere be seen more on like a bigger stage sort of thing. So like going to like a big boys club like Cramlington. Then obviously when Newcastle scouted me, it was like traveling in every day, like, you know, like an hour into training, and then eventually, like, all my family decided to move back to Newcastle. So it was one of them things where obviously I was 8 at the time, my sister was 11, and my brother would have been about 16, 17. So we all had to move back to Newcastle, even though my mum and dad wanted to probably spend the rest of their lives in like just a nice, quiet, peaceful place. Had to move back to Newcastle just for me. But when I was 8, I was oblivious. I was just thinking, oh, brilliant, because I'm close at training. So like that's what I thought at that time. But for the first 3 months, because it was a new build, we were getting to Newcastle. We sold the house in Seahouses, they moved in, and we're basically like, the house wasn't ready yet. So, and it was too expensive to sort of rent a house in Newcastle. It was much cheaper to rent in Seahouses. So we had to rent somewhere in Seahouses. But I started school in Ponteland with my sister. So you imagine I'm living in Seahouses, I'm now at a school in Ponteland, and I'm training in Newcastle. So it was like leaving at 7:30 in the morning. My dad would take me and my sister in, and you know, my brother moved in with his mate's grandma because he had to be close to college and stuff. So like all these people are making sacrifices for me, but I had no idea really at the time. So I was only 8. So my dad would leave at 7:30, take me and my sister to school, go to school in Ponteland, and then it would be too much for him to drive back. Do you know what I mean? Like all the way back to the hours, like another hour, and then come back for it in the day. So you know, wait around, do God knows what through the day, and then at 4 o'clock, yeah, like when school finished at 3:30, I'd get a train at 4. Then my sister would come with me, and then yeah, we'd do 2 hours of training. She would do her homework, and then I'd train 6 till 8, and then I'd be getting back to 6 hours at like 9:15. That was like 4 times a week. So like that was for 3 months. That was like for September, October, November, and we moved in December. So I think like them sacrifices everyone else has made, like my brother, my sister, my dad, and my mum, that was all for me. But obviously I was sort of, like I've touched on, oblivious to it. So the biggest reason for me to wake up and go to training and give 200% is I've got to repay them in some way. So that's it.
No, I love that. You were 8 years old when that was kind of happening, did you say?
Yeah, 8, yeah.
That's crazy. It's crazy because like you don't realize like the stuff that your parents, even for myself, like because obviously I was living quite not as far away as Seahouses, but I was living a little bit out of the way. Like your parents would drive you to training 4 or 5 days a week, travel to a weekend. You don't realize it until you're a bit older, but especially to do it at such a young age, your family must have had so much belief in you that must have just like pushed you on that kind of extra mile and probably give you that a bit of confidence in yourself. Like you probably didn't realize, like I said, until a certain age what your family were doing, but for them to have that belief, which we'll touch on later, because I know your dad had, there's a few quotes that you mentioned in that interview with might have been with Tom, but some of the things that your dad said, like that must have inspired you so much to obviously keep on pushing and, like you said, give that 200%.
Yeah, but like you basically just said it there, like them all moving down, it was like ultimately want to sacrifice, but two, like showing that, you know, they think they're doing it not because like you know, because ultimately I could have got released within a year, like at the end of the 9s or in the 10s or 11s. So then to, like you say, show that belief in, you know, everyone moved down for me, then it, you know, obviously give us that confidence to keep going and keep getting the next, because obviously it was only like 1 year contracts, going up through the academy and just keep going.
When do you think, obviously when you're a young lad, you always think you're going to be a professional footballer, you don't really think anything different, especially when you're in like a setup at Newcastle, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be for the first team. But when do you think was the point where you had actually clicked in your head, like, right, this is like actually, like, I think like this is going to go somewhere sort of thing? Was there a certain point or anything, or was it just something that like you always thought?
It was, I think it was something that you always thought, because you've got to always believe that, you know, when people say when you start on the 9s, like 1 or 2% of the players will actually have a career in the game. Well, like you may as well be that 1 or 2%. Do you know what I mean? If you're gonna keep training, like do everything to be that 1 or 2%. So I think always believing, but then I think your scholarship's the first taste of it when you finish school and then you get that 2-year scholarship. That's like, hold on a second, I'm getting like you know, like a couple £100 a week to do this now. Like, you know, you get your first money, and you start driving, and you sort of start thinking like, look, I should be like giving everything. Yeah, I'm like got me scholarship for Newcastle, and it's like a massive thing. And then when you're doing them 2 years, all you can think about is I'm a year or two away from potentially getting a professional contract and like being a, you know, professional footballer. But then even then, in my eyes, like getting that first professional contract was not like, right, you've done it now, like you're professional for Newcastle, because you're still a long way away. So I think, yeah, probably always believing that it was going to happen. But then probably when I got offered my scholarship, I was like, yeah, it was a big moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell one thing though, in terms of like you're talking about, like even when you got your first professional contract, which is a big thing, especially being at a Premier League club for whatever, lad.
Yeah.
Obviously, you end up getting a lot of money, and there's a lot of things that come with it. But you seem to be very humbled with it. Like every little experience, obviously, you mentioned about your family sacrifice and a lot of things. You seem to be very humbled with it. Like even when you got your contract, you weren't like, "Oh, this is me making it." Like I'm still got a long way to go here. Where do you think that come from? Do you think it was from something that your family kind of instilled in you, or was it just something that you always kind of had in your head, that you were always quite grounded with things?
Yeah, I think, you know, like my mum and dad, just like working class, just, you know, normal people, and just made us grow up with them, just manners, and just being polite, and just, you know, if you work hard and you're a nice person, just good things just happen to you and happen to others, you know, sort of things. So I think it's just, yeah, I think it's just that really, like probably just the way you brought up, and just having that family and support and network. It's almost like just being humble with everything, because there's always people better off than you. There's always people in worse situations. So
yeah, having that good family support network's massive, especially like
yeah,
a lot of people who I've talked to who are successful, they always have that family network. Like for example, like Sean and Matty, their family network in terms is very, very strong, and that's obviously helped
yeah,
them push. Like they come from like a successful sporting ground, like sporting family
yeah,
as well. So having
yeah,
that network will definitely massively push you on. So we'll jump into obviously we talked about how important your family is, but more specifically your dad. I know obviously there's been some tough times for your family in terms of your dad battling cancer a
yeah,
number of times. So I didn't realize actually that he battled cancer previously before you were even born as
yeah.
well, which I
He
didn't
did,
realize,
yeah,
which must have been
yeah.
really
So
tough.
yeah, that was obviously, you know, I wasn't born there, but me oldest brother was, and that was terminal as well. So that was he had throat cancer, and he got given 2 to 4 weeks to live. Do you know, like, you know what I mean? Like the doctor, she said, you've got 2 or 4 weeks. There's nothing really much we can do. And then yeah, there was like after like a couple of weeks, they said we can do this an operation on you, but there's like a 5-10% chance that you'll actually come out of theatre. And he just said, well, 5 to 10%, like brilliant. Do you know, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's the way he looked at it. Like you didn't look at it 90% chance I'm not. You just looked at it as like 5 to 10% chance I will. And then you had the operation, and then obviously after like a long road back to recovery, because it was a bit of his throat, like, and he had to sort of learn how to speak and, you know, eat again, because like a bit of his tongue's like not fully there and stuff. So the first time was tough, and then obviously the second time I was 13 or 14 going into high school, and my sister was doing her GCSEs as well. So I always, because obviously I've done my GCSEs, and I know it is obviously it's maybe not as hard as A levels and all that, because I haven't quite done them. But like she was going through her GCSEs, but like the school were brilliant with her, like Pontiel, and like giving her extra time, and, you know, handing in things, or even like in her exams, she got like extra time, just because it was like right at that moment when she was going through it all. But then for me as well, like Newcastle as well, like Joe Joyce, remember like Jimmy Nelson, George Scott, like, because obviously my mum would work, and if I could never get into training, they were always first like picking me up from my house, taking us in, dropping us back, just making sure everything was good and stuff. So like I couldn't ask anything more from them as well.
Yeah.
But it was a tough period. Yeah.
Yeah, because for you, well, specifically you and your sister, that they're tough periods of your life. Also, like GCSEs, there's a lot of stress on you and stuff to kind of do well to kind of get a good education down the line. And for yourself, 14 years old, that's around that time where scholarships might start getting given. You're thinking about, right, this is when I'm gonna have to try and get my head down. Like when you're a little bit younger, yes, you're in an academy setup and serious, but you can kind of enjoy your game. When you get to that 14, 15, 16, it's like, well, the pressure's on a bit. And then getting that thrown on top of you as well must have been like just, I don't know, really, really tough to deal with, and fair play to you for dealing with it.
Yeah.
Was there any moments that really, can you remember that kind of, you were struggling quite a bit at that age or not?
I think like it was mental, because when all this was going on, I had no idea. It was literally just one day. It was just, me mum said, "Oh, I'm going to pick you from school today," which was like, so my mum and my dad was already retired before this, so and my mum saying, "I'm going to pick you from school," I was a bit like, "Oh, where's dad?" Didn't even know he was going into hospital that day. So I was like, "Oh, why isn't dad?" "No, I'll just pick you up." So I didn't think anything of it, and then my brother rang me. My brother went to hospital with my dad, because he was, obviously I was 14, and he's 9 years older than me, so he was like 23. So he said, "Oh, just come to hospital." And I was like, "Oh, why?" Like, sort of why? And I was 14, I'm a bit more clued on and stuff. But so why is dad there? Because I had there's nothing the days prior or weeks or months. And he said, "Oh, just be as quick as you can," sort of thing. And then me dad told me in the car, like all the families in the car, my sister, me, mum, brother, and he was the strongest one there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was mental. He's the one going through, but he was the one making sure everyone else was going by the day. And I remember, because I got told it was like a Tuesday. It was on a Tuesday, and I had training that night. And my mum said, "Oh, like you don't need to go in." And my dad said, "No, you do." And he said, "You need to go in and keep going." So I went to train that night. Joe Joyce came down and seen us and everything. But yeah, he was the one keep pushing us. I don't know how he does it, to be honest.
I love that. I love that. I love his attitude in terms of like saying, like, when he first had that operation before obviously you were born, about he had that 5%. He was like, "Great, I've got 5%. That's 5% chance." Like that positive mindset of like, right, I've still got the chance of that. And obviously there's things down the line which you talk about his mindset. Kind of, I can see, because you're a very positive person, you're always a happy kind of guy. It's obviously passed over to you a lot, mate. I've never seen you be negative or anything like that, which is why I'm trying to like get into like trying to ask, like, was there any moments where you were really struggling? Because when you see these people on the outside and they're always positive and stuff like that, like, that's great. I love positive people to build everybody up, but there might be times where in reality, like, you're not feeling that all the time. But obviously your dad's attitude to things, like he was always the one who was building everyone up, even when he was struggling, and he was saying, "Yes, Kelly, you need to go to training." That's the kind of, he's got that belief in you, sort of thing. So it's so good. But like, was there really any times where you debated even like quitting football, or it was getting too much, or was it just like, look, my dad's saying you need to go and do it, so I'm going to go and do it for him, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it was funny, to be fair, because you mentioned that, and it was actually prior to the second time my dad getting cancer. I was about under 13s and the 14s, and obviously I'm 6'3" now, but obviously to get to 6'3", you've got a bit of growing to do. And it was like 13, 14, I was growing a lot, sort of like not growing into my body. I was like Bambi on ice, and I'd be injured for 6 weeks with my hip flexor, come back to training, train a few weeks, and then like my hip flexor, I'd kick a ball and just have the worst pain, and like just from growing, I was basically just growing at my body. And I sort of, I was obviously got in the academy at an early age, so I must have been doing something right. And I got about probably 13, 14, and I was like just injured and playing, but not really that, what I mean, not getting, say, there was like tournaments where I maybe didn't go to and stuff, like all age groups and people my age were. And it was just purely because, like, in that period, I wasn't my best, just because I was grown. And I just remember, like, because of that, all these things happening, when you're that age, it's easy to not look at the positives in situations and stuff. And yeah, it was like probably like 6 months before the second time my dad got cancer. I said, like, I don't want to play football anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I said that, and I was, I remember I literally, it wasn't just like a thought, and that was it. It was like, mum and dad were like, you sure anything? I was like, yeah. Like, I don't enjoy it because I'm just getting like injured, and I can't like run properly in that, because when I'm just coming back to fitness and I'm just getting injured. So, I rang Newcastle and said like, oh, I don't want to come in, sort of thing. And I remember it was Jimmy Nelson came round to my house and just said, if there's anything we can do, like, sort of thing. And then I don't know what it was, to be honest. It was like just a matter of like flipping a switch, and I was just thought, what am I talking about, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is, obviously, like you say, I'm very positive and everything, but there is them times where everyone, it's okay to sort of feel like that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's what it was really. And then I just forgot about it. And then six months later, something like that happened to me dad, and then it gives us that extra motivation to go, yeah, I'm doing this. I've came this far, and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. It's magic Jimmy Nelson. Jimmy Nelson's a legend. Like, got to shout Jimmy Nelson out. Absolute legend in Newcastle. Absolute legend. But it's good for you to talk about that, because obviously I've never heard you talk about it. Probably a lot of people never really heard you talk about it. And I remember when I was that age, I was exactly the same thing. Hip flexor, 14, 15. I struggled a lot with like severs in my Achilles. Suffered a lot with my lower back with injuries.
I missed that bit there.
Yeah, I was going to say, signals better than that.
Hip flexors, yeah.
Yeah, hip flexors, Achilles with that severs, that little pulling on the heel.
Yeah.
My lower back.
That knee problem as well.
I had a lot of, a lot of things. A lot of severs with the little lump on your
lump on your knee and that. Loads of people had that. You always trade on that.
Slatters, that's what it's called.
Slatters, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of probably young lads who are listening. So yeah, I was saying there's probably like a lot of young lads who are probably going through similar things. And I listened to a podcast. You heard the High Performance podcast, the Jake Humphrey one?
High Performance,
really good podcast. But I listened to Rio Ferdinand's episode, and he talked about it when he was like 13, 14. And he went from like being one of the best players kind of his age group. And he said he just lost it completely. Like he's technically was just all over the place. He kind of lost, like you said, Bambi on ice sort of thing. Lost his technique. But it's a thing when you're growing, especially like you're a tall lad, I'm a tall lad. Like Rio was obviously a tall lad as well. Like they're going to go through periods like that. And it's great that when you obviously going through that phase, like, first of all, that you're talking out about struggling, because every young lad, when they're at that age, probably does get frustrated. It does annoy them, especially with injuries, when everyone else is kind of pushing on. It is tough, and obviously young lads listening can understand and kind of relate to that. Also, the fact that the club was so good, Jimmy, coming around and like speaking to you about it and maybe understanding, which I think a lot of coaches and maybe especially around that scholarship time are sure to kind of get rid of people where maybe they're not tall enough, or maybe they're not growing into the body, this, that, and the other. So the fact that they were really patient with you and kind of came and said, look, we see the potential, sort of thing, take your time with it. Like, and obviously you flipped the switch and then you were kind of back into it. So just a message to any young sort of athletes out there, not just in football, when you're at that age group, your body's going to be going through different things, and it's going to be, you might have little niggles and injuries and stuff. But once you get through that, it's just getting through that period and trying to manage your body the best you can, which I'm a big believer in. When you're young, just manage your body, see how you're feeling. If you're not feeling great, you might need to go and see a physio, or maybe take a day off, sort of thing. And then after it, you'll kind of, once you grow into your body, you'll feel so much better for it. So yeah, I appreciate you talking about that as well. Because like I said, a lot of people won't realise it, and it's that good job that you didn't pack in, because look at how far you've came now, man.
I know. Because I think obviously when you're that age as well, you nowhere near as mentally tough as what you are when you get older. So now with touch wood, or like went through tough times of injuries or not playing, it wouldn't just be a case of I'm going to ring up and say I don't want to come in. But when you're that age, that can you just need that people around you, just like keep on the right track and sort of thing. So obviously when I grew in my body and I wasn't just getting injured just because I was growing, then it was much better.
Yeah, it's also like, even when you are younger, like it's easier to talk about how you feel, injuries and stuff, when you're older, because you're a bit more experienced and you know that like coaches will listen to you. But when you're 14 and stuff, you don't want to. I remember going to training with like bandages around my knees, stuff like taping up my ankles and stuff because I was in pain and I didn't want to miss training. Didn't want to say anything. Like obviously, my parents and stuff knew about it, and I was ibuprofen gel and everything up. But talking about because you might be doing some damage to your body, that's another thing. And obviously, if you want to be a professional footballer, you want to be playing until you're in your late 30s. So just talking to physios, being patient with it, like trying to manage your body the best you can, and don't give up because you're a prime example of a reason why not to give up, mate.
Yeah, not to.
Yeah. So we'll talk about your progression, obviously in Newcastle, going from obviously when you got your scholarship. How was your scholarship, and how do you feel you progressed into like because obviously you played youth cup and stuff. You had a decent youth cup spell, didn't you? Did you score that, Rick?
Yeah, scored hat. Yeah,
not
mate.
Bad. Not bad.
Yeah, I think like obviously same like I touched on, like it was a big sort of turning point in scholarship because it was like, you know, you're going in full time, you're going in with the under 18s and everything. You sort of want to play for the reserve team, and that seemed like massive when you're like 16, 17, which it is a very big thing. But yeah, so then in my first year scholar, I had me first. So obviously I had me hip flexor problems when I was like 13, 14, but I had like a couple of seasons where 15s, 16s, I just played constantly, loved football. Obviously, ultimately, because of that, got my scholarship. And then my first year of my scholar, obviously tore my grade 3 MCL. And it was in a friendly, and I was not in the starting team for the under 18s. And it was like the players who weren't playing, we played Blackburn, and I remember just thinking, I was playing centre mid, and just think I'm giving 200% in this game, giving everything because I want to, show the manager and stuff I should be playing, and going in for a tackle, and I absolutely just good. It was a good tackle. It was an honest tackle, and my leg just flew back, and I tore MCL, like my ligament in my knee, and I was out for like 4 months. And being 16, 17, 4-month injury, it was tough, but I sort of got to work on other things. I was like obviously very lean then, but I was like 4 months, so, doing a lot of gym, a lot of upper body work, and I sort of, from the past experience of being injured, didn't see it as a negative. I seen it as like it's happened, I couldn't have done anything about it, and I started to work on things in the gym and stuff to get better out. So when I was returned back to fitness, I was, stronger sort of thing. And then came back and I played a couple of months, and then I rolled my ankle playing in a charity match, like for Newcastle's 23s, and we're playing Hebburn at on their pitch. And I went down a pothole on the pitch, rolled my ankle, so that was in March. So I missed the rest of the season. So my first year scholar was very much just like, 2 big injuries that weren't like anything I could really control. But I think in that period I learned to, there's it's a massive saying, isn't it, to control the controllables.
Mm-hmm.
But in that season, that was what I learned from being a first year scholar, was to control what I can control, and that's what I sort of learned from that period.
I love that. I love that attitude that you kind of have, because with a young lad, a lot of people would beat themselves up with injuries and things are going. And I know what it's like when you're young, all the other lads are outside training, you're stuck in there, but you took every single opportunity away from football to work on different things, whether it be in the gym, whether it be like anything, watching games as well is another big thing, learning from watching games, even if you're on the sidelines. So that mindset's obviously took you really far. So after that, how did things kind of...
So I think like obviously, like I know obviously when I'm looking at your pages and stuff, and your big talk on like things you like, surroundings, like not even just like your family and your friends, but like what you watch and tell you, who you listen to, like all has a big impact, isn't it? So I find like, because I went through them experiences when I was 13, 14 with my hip flexors and my dad and everything, that's why my mindset was like that. When I done my knee and I done my ankle, I just seen everything as a big positive. And then in my second year scholar, I was playing in loads of positions. Like obviously I was not like, since a kid I was always like striker, and then it was really I played like centre back, centre mid, striker. I played youth cup, and obviously like scored a hat trick the first round, scored one in the next round, one in the round after that, and then sort of just enjoying football, enjoying playing football with like lads who I played with since I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? We like grew up together through the process, so getting to that stage was good. And then in that season, I struggled with like I had a hernia, so I was taking tablets and doing like tablets off the club and doing gym exercises to strengthen me core, me groins and stuff. But then ultimately after like I stopped taking the tablets and all my exercise, it still wasn't right. So I had a hernia operation, but that was only a quick compared to me
4
knee and
weeks, isn't
ankle.
it?
It felt,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like 4 6 weeks. So compared to that, it was just a little holiday. But yeah, and then I just enjoyed playing football, and I got to the point where it was like, you know, I played in an age group like Matty and Ollie and Bales and Adam and Tommy and Elliot. So we had a good team. And you know, when Matty was injured, Dave Watson, you know, made his captain of the team. Obviously, Matty was the captain, but when he wasn't playing, and Bales was a first year pro, I was like the captain. And then going from first year scholar to being like injured and not in the team, to then my second year being the captain of the 18s, it was a big plus. And then obviously that got me professional contract, got a 2 year professional contract off the back of that.
Yeah, that must have been a good moment for you and your family.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember going in. I was absolutely buzzing there.
No. So you briefly touched on it there. So you flipped, because I know obviously you were a striker. You were always very attacking, very skillful and stuff when you were younger.
Yeah.
When did that flip happen, and what was the reason behind it?
So it's just again like just opportunities and seeing an opportunity, and it was because obviously, you know, Lewis Gibson, he got bought by Everton when we were going into second year scholar, and you know, I was, you know, me, Matty, and him were like best mates, and I was good that he left. And he went to Everton, but I was buzzing for it at the same time because, you know, Everton's a great club and everything. But yeah, it was just the start of the season because he was a left-sided centre back. We didn't really have a left-sided defender, and Dave Watson just, you know, pulled us because of, you know, he just said at the first game of the season was a Man City at home, and he said like, can you just literally play? Yeah, I know. Obviously, I played striker when I was a kid and all the way up, and played centre mid as well. So obviously, because I played centre mid, he thought, well, it's not too big of a jump. Like, you know, I'll play centre mid. Can you just slot in and play centre back? And I just said, like, yeah, you're the manager. If you want me to play, 100%. And then played there at home at Man City, and I had a good game. Like, you know, I was just, yeah, I had a good game. And then played the first 10 games of the season there. Played well, enjoyed playing there. It was different, so I enjoyed it. But then when we sort of, Isaac Gambin sort of came back in and started playing left centre back because he naturally is, I moved up the pitch again. So for the rest of my under 18s, I was talking about youth cup there. I played as like a number 9, well, in a front two with like Tommy and Elias and stuff. So like maybe Tommy on the wing and me and Elias up front. So played the rest of my season as a, you know, as a striker midfielder. And then it wasn't until my first year pro, so I got my professional contract and I was got 2 years, and you know, I was thinking, well, I don't even really know what position in, because I'm like, I've literally played centre back, centre mid, and striker. So got this 2 year professional contract I'm buzzing about. But I'm thinking when I go back in pre-season, I don't really know
Where are you
where I wanted
playing?
to play. Yeah. And I just remember Ben Dawson calling us over, and like I think it was like the second day of pre-season, and he said it was like for the 23s, and he went, "You're not going to do pre-season with us." And I was thinking, oh God, I didn't have a clue what to think. Like I didn't even think, oh, that means I'm going up the first team. And he says, oh, are you going away with England to the Euros? And I was like, obviously that's my first call up, and I was absolutely buzzing. So I said, oh, where do I want us to play? And I'm like generally thinking probably in a front two or like in midfield. And Ben said, oh, they'll like want you playing in the back three. They're playing like 5-3-2, and they want you playing like centre back in the back three, and I was like, obviously, like, grasping an opportunity. I said, yeah, like, no, put in goal. I'm not really bothered. So, I went away to England with the Euros, and I sort of went as just like a backup centre back, because it was my first call up and stuff. But then we did a week at St George's Park before, and then it's Paul Simpson, the manager. We'd done that week, and he just pulls us aside and he says, like, I'm going to start you the first game against Turkey, like what I've seen, and And I played a couple of games, played Turkey, Ukraine as a centre back, and then came back to Newcastle. And I was thinking, if I'm getting opportunities as a centre back for England, I want to sort of carry on playing there. And then played, 40 odd games in that 23 season, my first year, like at centre back. And like Ben Dawson was like, I think I've always seen it as an advantage, and obviously people might see it as a disadvantage, like changing positions so late, because I was literally like 18 and I had a pro contract, and I'm changing completely to being a centre back. But because of that, I was like always thought in my head, oh well, if I want to accomplish playing in the Premier League, I need to learn how to play this position like as quick as I can and fast, because I'm leaving it like so late, because like people have been playing it since they were a kid. So like Ben Dawson he'd work with us every day after training, like obviously with all the games we're playing stuff, like even if it was 5-10 minutes on just body shape, like clearance. It was like every week just, and then in games I started noticing like, oh, that is actually coming on, that's coming on. And after every game I'd watch all my clips back that Hayden would send us, and I'd go through all in possession, out of possession, transition ones with Ben, and he'd sit down and talk us through like good and what I need to improve on. And then I did that all season, and obviously went on loan as a centre back to Stevenage, Mansfield, and Plymouth, and made my debut as a centre back. So it's all sort of just resolved for me, seeing a Dave Watts, and I'll play there first game of the season.
And not a bad change then, not a bad change. Do you think was there a mindset change in terms of change position? Because I'm a big believer in the mindset of like goalkeepers and defenders is completely different to the strikers, mate. Completely. Like, I can understand why strikers love playing football and look forward to every game, because being a defender and a goalkeeper, there's a lot of pressure. If you mess up, like, that's to goal most likely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you notice that change in mindset?
Yeah, I did, to be fair. That's actually mental, because I've experienced being that number 9 to score a goal. But I think in football there's a pressure and everything, because I remember when I was playing the striker in the Eve Cup, played Crystal Palace, and it was 2-2, and we got a penalty in the 110th minute, and I was like the penalty, obviously being a striker, and I took it, and taking a penalty at 2-2 and like 10 minutes to go in extra time. That's obviously a big pressure. You miss that, you gut and all this, but as a defender, you don't really need to get in them situations. You let the strikers take the pens, but there is a different mindset. Yeah, that is very true. Obviously, you've got to be a bit more. It's hard to explain, actually. Yeah, a
bit more resilient, would you say, or
a bit more resilient? Yeah, it makes you a bit more stronger and a bit more resilient. You've got to do things properly, and you sort of routine for the game. You want everything to be right, because you want the game. You want to control the game. You don't want to let the striker control you. Where when you're playing as a striker, you're not worried about centre backs. To be honest, you're just more like, oh, I'm going to do what I do and cause them a problem. Whereas a defender, you've got that responsibility of feeling control. So that's what always my mindset building up to a game is always trying to get my mental. You've got to be physically ready for the game. But mentally, as a defender, I feel like, and as a goalkeeper as well, probably even more so, mentally thinking, I'm ready to play this game. I'm going to be in control of the striker and the situations I'm going to be put in. So definitely.
So talking about like pre-game routines and stuff, do you have like a set routine that you do? Anything specific, like watching clips, something you eat for breakfast? I don't know, like anything at all like that you always do?
Like, I think it's not a, some people say, superstitions is like fear. It's like almost like you need to do things because it's almost a sense of fear, and you're not you need to do silly things. I don't have any. I'm not saying people who do, like last one out the changing room, or I wore these pair of trainers into the game and I scored, so I'm going to wear the same pair. Like, I don't have anything. I wouldn't say that's silly. If people think that's what they need to do to be physically and mentally ready for a game, then crack on with whatever you need to do. But for me personally, I don't have anything out of the ordinary in terms of that. But I do have for a 3 o'clock kickoff, I'll always have the same breakfast, like porridge and banana honey. For lunch, I'll always have toast, egg and beans. Like, it's not really like a superstition, but that is just my preparation to make me feel good at 3 o'clock. That's what I like to do. Like, always going for like a 10-minute walk in the morning before a game, like just clear my mind, just not some like lying around all day and doing me stretching, like all my sort of routine I do. Yeah, I always stick the same.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in routine, but when you mentioned about like the kind of people having like set superstitions because it's kind of like this, they're scared of the need to do this, so if the game goes well, sort of thing. I'm a big believer in like you're in control of what it's actually going to happen. So it doesn't matter if you like, I don't know, like you try to tie your shoelace and your shoelace snap, and you're like, oh no, right, that's the game's going to be ruined now. Like, I'm not going to be able to do it. Like, you've got to be able to trust in your own ability. And obviously, you can tell you've got that belief in yourself, but having that routine, like things like your breakfast and your stretching, they're things that should never, like, there shouldn't be anything that kind of affects that. But things that you can sometimes not control, like, I don't know, like with your walk, for example, it might be an absolutely horrendous day outside. You might be right, I'm not going to really go for a walk today. But like little things, if things don't go completely to plan, you still know that you're going to be able to perform.
Yeah, 100%. Like you used to there for like an easy example. If it was like lashing down with rain, I'd go, right, a 10-minute walk's not going to make this play good or bad. Like, it's just something that, them little minute percentages, but it's like, like you say, me not doing a walk's not going to make this play bad, it's not going to make this play good. So, like, I think I have a routine, but like you say, when things differ from that or anything like that, then it's not really.
You've got to have the belief in your ability that you're capable of doing stuff no matter the circumstances, no matter the weather, no matter like how you're feeling on the day, whatever it is. You've got to go out and then perform, which is like it's your job to do it like once or twice a week. So you've got to do it.
100%.
So moving on to your, obviously back to your football career. When was your first taste of time with the first team at Newcastle? When was the first training session, first opportunity? Can you remember?
I think it was when I came back from England from the Euros. Obviously, we're away for like 3.5 weeks, and that was like a big bulk of pre-season. Came back and trained with the first team, and it was Rafa was the manager at the time, and it was like a couple of days after I came back. So obviously that was great because obviously I come back from playing from England and I was full of like confidence, and it was a good opportunity to train with them. And then that end of that season, I got on the bench in the Premier League against Fulham. So I was like my first time being involved. It was the last game of the season. The 1-4-0. I didn't come on, but it was just great. I was only like 18 or 19, so it was a great experience being on the bench, and sort of like it was a little like playing centre back the whole season and getting on the bench as a centre back. It was like a taste of Newcastle rate me in that position sort of. So that was my first taste of being involved with the first team, being on the bench against Fulham.
Yeah. So from then, did you go on loan that season after? Would you go? Was it Stevenage you went to first?
Stevenage first, yeah.
What was that like? First taste of senior, kind of like obviously senior debut.
Yeah. So obviously I got that taste of being on the bench in the Premier League, and I wanted more of that. But to get more of that, I needed to go on loan and learn how I learned a lot. As a defender, and it was actually good because I'm not good at the time, but when I look back on it now in terms of my development, because we were struggling at the bottom, we never really had the ball much, so I was always defending. And it sounds stupid, but because I played high up the pitch, one of my strongest points, as a defender, was stepping out from the back, being comfortable on the ball, and going to Stevenage, I learned the other side of the game. I learned like there's some streetwise strikers, there's long ball like target men, there's quick ones that run behind you. So I learned because we were struggling at the bottom, I learned how to deal with the pressure of not having the ball and constant defending. So I learned a lot from my time at Stevenage, and my first taste of being in the men's dressing room, and like you say, like obviously there's big games when you're higher up the table, but at the other end of the table, where I remember playing, it was at obviously for Stevenage, it was at home, and we played Morecambe, and we were second bottom and they were bottom, and it was like 2 points difference. So if they beat us, we would have went bottom. And that week lead up to the game was probably the most. Even I played for England, being on the bench in the Premier League, but that week up to that game was like the most pressure I've ever felt for a game, because it was like this. We had the stadium was packed, Morecambe brought loads of fans. The atmosphere was just incredible, because it wasn't a top end of the table clash. It was second bottom and bottom, and we won 1-0. And yeah, that feeling was, it was amazing after the game. Even though we're still then, we enjoyed that night, but then it was like, look, we're still not in a great position. We need to keep going. We're not going to get carried away because we'll be bottom of the table. But I've learned a lot at Stevenage.
Yeah, you're getting that. That's a good kind of first taste of senior football, especially with the amount of pressure. And it'll probably make the experience of going to a better team, or a team who's higher up in the table, when there is a little bit less pressure, it'll make that seem a lot easier. So having that taste, like a lot of people, maybe like young lads and stuff, probably don't want to go on loan to a team that's struggling, and they don't want that to be the first day. Because some people, it might be a lot too much pressure for some people. Because it's people's livelihoods. There's a lot more pressure on people's career in terms of like the financial benefits as well. Some people are actually fighting for mortgages, for the bonuses that obviously pay the mortgages and families. So that sort of lesson has obviously stood you really, really well. And then you mentioned about the pressure for that one game. Do you get quite nervous for game? Like, first of all, when you were back there at Stevenage, did you get really nervous for quite a lot of games? And how is that kind of developed now to the point where do you still get nervous now?
I think at Stevenage, it was, out of me 3 loan spells, probably Stevenage was the most, because like you say, my first loan, we weren't doing well, and like you touched on there, like a lot of times in conversations, whether it was in pre-match talk from the captain or the manager, or like afterwards when we were reviewing the game, a lot of it was about, look, we get relegated and go to National League, like wage cuts, and it was like mortgages, like I've got a family, like got kids, when you it was all for that. And I was thinking, well, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have kids, or like anything to worry about that. But it made me realise, like, well, I want to give 100% for him, because he's fighting for that. So I know I'm not, but he's on my team, and I've got to know these players and stuff. So it was sort of like that. So I think pressure-wise, probably Stevens the more so. But then as I've got older, I think I read a lot of things. I'm reading Tyson Fury's book at the minute, and a lot of these top athletes, like, they seem to say they get the confidence from the training, and like training camps and the training sessions and build up and preparation. So it's almost like you've done everything possible to be right for this game or whatever it is, and if you have a good game, then brilliant. But then if you don't, you can't be too hard on yourself, because like these things happen. You can't have a good game every game, and if you don't have a good game, it's not because you didn't give 100%, or if it is because of them reasons, then you need to look yourself in the mirror. But if it's because you just didn't have a good game, striker was like unbelievable and unplayable, then you just got to hold your hands up and just sort of review it and move on.
Mm-hmm. No, I love
so
that.
In terms of nervous, I think I'm all right. I think obviously I do get nervous. It's good to get nervous and like be ready, because that tells you you're ready for the game, but not overly nervous. No,
I love that. You've got it. I like how you're kind of investing in yourself in terms of reading as well, which I think, I remember when I was kind of young, I started reading when I was in football and listening to podcasts, and people would kind of be like, please listen to podcasts. I think you would kind of look and stand out quite a bit. But I like how I think it's becoming a lot more acceptable with podcasts and people talking about it and stuff. So it's great to see you're investing in your own knowledge and in looking at these top athletes and listening to podcasts, reading books on some of these top athletes and understand the process
Yeah.
that they go through to get to the point, which is like one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast. Like I want to look into your mindset. And I think a lot of young athletes, young footballers, be very interested in terms of obviously your progression and kind of where you're at now in terms of preparation, mentality for games.
Yeah, I think obviously like you say, it's just sort of, you can always learn, can't you, like in everything. So whether it's like reading a book, listening to a podcast, so yes, I just think like learn how other people have done it. You don't have to do exactly what they've done, but if you just take a little bit from what they've done and then a little bit from someone else, and sort of always listening, I think you can develop that with age. And I feel like because I transitioned as a centre back quite late in my career, I've always, even now, I'm still, whether it's like the players in the team, like all the players, I'm just using their experience to my advantage. So, so I'm obviously only 21, but the centre backs in the team who are 30, they've played 9 more years than me, so I never think I know more than them. So I'm always asking them questions and taking little bits of information from them and the coaches and everything. So I think like at Newcastle, like Jamal Lascelles, like being the captain, like my position, I always ask him questions. I'm never like afraid to ask him any questions that on the field, off the field, what he thinks I should do, because he's much more experienced than me. And ultimately, like, to be the captain of Newcastle, then he's he's a good leader, and I can learn from him as best I can.
I love that, especially when you're being a young lad. Sometimes when you're a young lad, you're doing really well. You've got your professional contract. You've made your first team debut. You're doing like really well with things. It's probably really easy to let the ego get the better of you in terms of thinking you know everything. But what you're talking about there is being open-minded and actually still wanting to learn from people, like experienced people. Even if you're going from Newcastle United and going on loan to like National League, even like National League North or lower, but there's been players there who have been playing 10 years more than you. Just because you're at Newcastle United, you're at the Premier League level, still learn from their experience. There's a lot of things that people can take from even dropping down leagues and talking to experienced people and just asking questions as well. I'm sure they'll probably enjoy it, like getting asked questions about, what do you think of this stuff? Like showing that enthusiasm and that passion for something and wanting to learn will help you so much. And like I said, you'll learn a lot from it, from asking those questions.
Yeah, I think like you say, like it's not even just people asking questions or reading books of these top athletes who are much higher than you. It's like everyone you can learn, whether they, like you say, like playing a few leagues below you, or like they don't play football, they play rugby or athletics. Like you can, it's more open than that. Like it's not just so narrow, like minded. Just all right, I just need to listen to like people who are higher than us. It's like everyone's got an important say, and if they want to help you and give you advice, then you need to take the time to listen, basically.
Yeah, there's definitely transfers, not just from like different sports like football to rugby, but like from business to football, like that mindset, that success mindset. There's a lot of things like people in business prepare for things in similar ways that footballers prepare for games. And there's also like a process to get into certain points. So you can take things, don't just because you're a footballer, you don't have to just study footballers and just study a podcast that a footballer's on. Study like a businessman's study, I don't know, like Elon Musk or somebody who's very successful, look into their journey and stuff.
I think it's like just known, isn't that successful people, like if you say it's in business or you're a PT or you play football, like the mindset still is the same. They have a lot of similarities, obviously differences in how they might do things because they do completely different things, but the core values are the same.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we'll jump into your debut, because obviously you've made your debut for Newcastle. What was that moment like, and what was the experience like around it, like weeks leading up to it? Did you kind of see it coming, or was it something that was kind of thrown on you last minute? What was the whole experience like?
It was obviously it was mental because I've been at Stevenage, been at Mansfield, and thinking that I'm just going to end the season with Mansfield, and then obviously COVID happened and came back, and it was just running that field and doing gym in the garden, and then obviously Premier League returned, and it was like the season's going to carry on, and they're going to play the last 9 games, and then so then I just got called and said they want you to come in and train with the first team for the last, like, I think it was 7 weeks to play, 7 or 8 weeks to play the last 9 games. And I remember just going in and just training. And at that time, it was, normally in a normal season, you can only play for 2 clubs. So you can only play, I played for Stevenage, played for Mansfield. I wouldn't be able to play, wouldn't be allowed to be involved in any games. But like FIFA and the FA changed the rule to a player can play for 3 clubs if there is an exceptional circumstance. So obviously still then though, like I was going in just ready just to train and just give me everything in training, knowing that I can't really play. But then it's obviously, to be able to play and get the the green light from the FA, because we had so many injuries in defence. And then I was on the bench the second last game of the season against Brighton, and then obviously Liverpool came on for Danny Rose for like the last 25 against Liverpool. That was just like marking like Mo Salah, marking like Mane from a corner, and then it was a bit surreal, but it was almost like this is everything I've done since like minute 1 to like now. Like now is everything I've done is for this right now. So sort of soaked all in, but it wasn't really till the night time where I was like realised that like that is everything. Like everything you've done, like going to training early, doing everything right. That was for that moment.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit it probably didn't really hit you as much because obviously it was COVID time and obviously there's still no fans at the minute, but there was no fans at the time.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't that feeling of coming on the pitch with loads of fans cheering your name and like your name getting announced and all that sort of stuff. So that's probably why it didn't hit you till that later on, when maybe like get back home, your families and your mates are messaging you and it's like blowing up on social media, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. That's when it's like, wow, probably this is everything that I've kind of worked for.
Yeah. Probably, I think you're right, because if I was, walking down the steps from the dugout and going to go on the pitch and there was 52,000 Geordies there, like obviously like a young lad making his debut would have been all buzzing for me and, like cheering us on. It probably would have hit us from that moment. Not like later that night, it probably would have hit us that moment. I'm making them debut. I've got to do all right. So I think you're right. But obviously with no fans, and it was probably a bit later on realising what I've done.
Yeah, it's still a good achievement, mate, making your debut. How old are you at the time?
20.
20.
Yeah, I'm 21. I'm trying to work out. 20.
Getting old, mate. That's class. So, just to kind of wrap up towards the end, where do you kind of envision your career going in football? Where do you kind of think, how far can you go? I want to probably put it as that.
Definitely I would touch on at the very, very start. When I was 8 years old, I said I wanted to be captain for Newcastle, play for England. So that's never changed. That was been a long-term goal since I was a kid. When I would say to my dad, I want to, play in the Premier League. So that is where I want to end up. So I'm doing everything I can to get there.
Yeah. Just a quick thing. So obviously, when you're a young lad, all you think about was football. The point that we are right now, you're still a young lad in terms of football context.
Yeah.
Like, so you obviously only really focus on football. Have you ever thought about life after football, or what happens if there's a long-term, there's a really serious injury? Do you ever think like that? Obviously, at the minute, you're probably in the mindset of focusing on football because you are young. But have you ever thought about life after football? Because obviously, like coming from my experience, I never see myself kind of stepping out of football at such a young age. Just to kind of put that into context, have you ever thought about what if or anything like that, or not really too much?
Not really too. Obviously, I'm, in terms of like investing in my pension and everything, I'm work with, she's called Claire and she's great. She like knows people in my girlfriend's family and stuff. And she helps with that side of things, just making sure I'm secure when I finish football. But in terms of what I would like to do next after football, haven't really,
you're still young, mate.
I haven't really thought about after football. I think to be a footballer, it's almost like, obviously, when you're a kid and you're 14, 15, you've got to, do well in school. I'm not saying to slack off in that department because, I did quite well in school, but it's always like concentrate and do well in school. But I think to be the top, you've like almost got to put every, when people say like, you put some eggs in each basket and you don't want to go all in and leave yourself short. But for me, like, if you want to be that 1% Premier League player, like, all eggs just need to be in that basket. You can't be saving 5% because, if it doesn't happen, I've got this plan B. Like, it was funny because my dad would always say it to us, and he sort of said it when I was a kid, and he always says it to me now, and so does my man. And it's sort of, I sort of take credit for it now, even though they told me. But they say to me, my plan B is to make sure plan A works. And I always find it funny. I always laugh at it because people say, you need a plan B and all this. And there's people that can say, like, you might not be a footballer, like, you need something to fall back on. But if you start thinking of stuff to fall back on, then you probably will end up falling back on it and doing it. So, yeah, plan B is to make sure plan A works.
I love that one. I love that, mate. I like that. But yeah, obviously you got that one for you. There's a lot of things that you've took from your dad. We didn't even mention it before, but I know that the kind of build up to you getting your debut, your dad always had that belief that you were still going to make your debut. Even though it was like the COVID, everything going on, you're like,
yeah,
your debut. I love that.
So like it was mental, and I would say to my mum, like, what is he on about? Because obviously the rule was, I touched on, you only play for 2 clubs, and I played for my 2 clubs, and I could only play in the last 9 games if there was like an exceptional circumstance, and we had like 5 centre backs fit. So like an exceptional circumstance would have literally just been just injuries really, or like if loads of them got COVID. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so I was like, my dad was saying like, you'll play, like, work hard and train, make sure you keep doing the right things, and you'll make your debut this year. And I was like, Dad, like, I've played for 2 clubs, like, at the minute I can't play. And he was like, just keep going, keep doing it, you will play. And then when I got there was loads of injuries, and I'm like looking at my dad thinking, and then when I got the FA said Newcastle applied and said yes. And then obviously when I came on against Liverpool, and then I did make a Premier League debut, that was something I personally, I never thought I would, not because I didn't think I was capable of, but just because, like you say, because of COVID and because of the rules, and I played for 2 clubs. But yeah, my dad always said, as soon as I went back to training, you will. And then I think if you say something enough, it just seems to happen.
Yeah, no, mate, I love that. I'm a big believer in that sort of thing. If you kind of keep saying things out loud, like I heard something the other day saying something out loud is 4 times stronger than actually just thinking it in your head.
Just thinking it, yeah.
Just thinking it. So actually saying it out loud, or writing stuff on paper, like, I'm going to be a Premier League footballer, or I'm going to be a successful bit, I'm going to make £1 million, whatever it is. Like, actually saying it, and like your dad's done the same sort of thing there. Like, even if it like the chances are like literally 1-2%, keep saying it. In that 1-2% will just slowly increase into 3 or 4%. Maybe 5 or 6, and down the line, things will happen.
Definitely, yeah. That was
it's crazy that. But just quickly, what you mentioned before about obviously having that all or nothing mindset. Just wanted to add this bit in. Obviously, if you're a young lad and you said that you kind of stuck in at school and you've done quite well, I think any young lad listening who does want to be a professional athlete, whether it's football or be successful in anything, sticking in school and still trying to get good grades, that'll carry over so much into whatever you go into. And even if you never use them grades, like I haven't actually used my GCSEs or anything. Obviously, I've done my personal training stuff, but there's a lot of things that I've learned from like putting the extra hours in studying, getting like obviously build up in the process of obviously getting good results and investing in your own knowledge. That'll transfer into your football and stuff like that. So don't suck it off. If you have that mindset with anything, with sacking this stuff off, like even if it's like cleaning your boots after training, cleaning your clothes after training, if you slack off on that, that'll end up carrying over into your football. So just for anybody who's listening, just sticking in it. Like it can be, it's there if you do really need it, but if you've got that all or nothing mindset, you won't need it. Like you obviously said, your plan B is to make sure plan A works, which I love that saying. I love that one. But yeah, just everything you do in life, do it properly.
Yeah, I think that's, you said it all there. To be fair, you can't just flip a switch and be like, oh, some things I give 100%, and some things I can just, you can't just keep doing that. It's like almost like everything you do is spot on, and making sure you're doing everything right.
Yeah, they all have carryovers, mate. But we'll wrap up with the 3 questions, because before the podcast, you were stressing about these 3 questions. So the first one, hopefully you remember what you're going to say. So the first one, 3 questions I ask everybody to wrap up the podcast. 3 people you'd like to invite round for dinner or go for a coffee with, past or present.
Right. So the 3 would be Tom Hanks for one. Just because my favourite movie of all time, Forrest Gump. I don't know how many times I've watched it, but it's just unbelievable. And then it's actually because it's my girlfriend's favourite movie, Sully, and that's obviously Tom Hanks as well. And I've watched that a couple of times because she always likes watching it. And so yeah, because obviously he's both the actor, I'd probably just like to sit down with him and talk about his movies. And then Michael McIntyre one, probably just because he can provide the entertainment, because me and him might be boring talking about his movies. So Michael McIntyre would be one, and just because my mum loves him. I think my mum would love to be a 3rd person, but I'm not going to invite her. And my 3rd person would probably be, have you ever watched Prison Break?
Yes, I finished them.
I'd probably want to invite Michael Scofield over, just because when I watch it, I've watched the first season a couple of times because I just love the way obviously I know he's acting and it's not real, but I just love the way he just thinks and stuff. I love to just talk to him about Prison Break.
Yeah, that'd be class. He's got a relentless mindset, to be fair. He is relentless.
I've listened to a few of the things on YouTube and stuff, and I didn't know he'd be like that, because he's I don't know, I just didn't expect it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's crazy. To be fair, I don't know, I'll have to look into them. But next question. 3 people you'd want to train with, so it could be obviously football related, but because I do a bit of fitness stuff, if you want to train in the gym with someone, it could be in the gym as well. So football or gym related, anybody you want.
Yeah, I think when COVID's all over, I'm gonna have to stick you there. When you get your new house with your girlfriend, come over and do a gym session in your garage. So yeah, you number 2. Probably football. I'm probably not going to say a good attacking player, because I won't want to train him, because he might make us look a bit silly, if he's on the other team. So if I could pick one attacking player to be on my team, so I don't have to play against him, I can watch him, I'd probably say Messi, because I just think he will do stuff in training where you just think that is just the best I've ever seen. I see obviously the Newcastle players, when I'm training with the first team, and the quality that some of the players have got is unbelievable. But then Messi's the greatest of all time, so I'd love to see what he does in training and what he's like. And then thirdly, I'd probably say Van Dijk. I'm going to say Van Dijk or Sergio Ramos, because they're the 2 players who I watch clips of before games to sort of just get in the just frame and just playing. Just because they're just winners, the leaders, obviously my position. So I'd love to them 2 are joined, Van Dijk and Ramos.
I love that. And then the last question, one thing you'd say to yourself 5 years ago.
Probably I'd probably say just go back to centre back now, instead of waiting until you're 18. Stop playing it when I was 15, 16, 5 years ago. No, I'd just say just all the hard work will pay off, so just enjoy it. Don't need to stress over little things. Just enjoy what you're doing.
Love that, mate. Lovely way to wrap up the podcast. I'll tag you out for anybody who doesn't already follow you already, because you've got a kind of few followers. You've got a little blue tick as well, which is nice. I'll put you. I don't know if you're on Twitter as well. I'm not on Twitter, but Twitter, Instagram, and stuff for everybody who wants to check you out and stuff on social media. But Kell, mate, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Great. I know. Thanks for having us, mate. Thank you.
No worries, mate.